So you want to know what it's like to live on an austere forward operating base in Afghanistan. What's it like for the soldiers that live there? Well, I'll tell you, most of the forward operating bases there are very austere. The one that I lived on had several amenities. I had a barbershop, store, dining facilities, gym, coffee shop, but that was the exception rather than the rule in Paktika Province, Afghanistan. As a senior logistician in Task Force Currahee, my job was to go out and assess. Go out and visit every base. What do they need? How can I make life better for the soldiers out here? Everything I do is hinged on that. About 2 to 3 times per week, I'd go out and visit bases. We had 26 of them that we supported. And I did this for 12 months with my team. I always came back with a very large list of stuff that they needed out there. It could be something as simple as trash bags, Mountain Dew, cream cheese, whatever they needed. A lot of times a helicopter coming back to pick me up was full of the stuff it got downloaded and taken care of. And why? To make life better for the soldiers that were living tough. So really what I was doing is I was starting with why, and I didn't even realize it. Paktika Province is in southeastern Afghanistan. It's one of the most mountainous, remote, and kinetic provinces in Afghanistan. It's bordered on 2 sides by Pakistan. It is one of the main infiltration routes from Pakistan. It's approximately 7,500 square miles, approximately the size of Massachusetts. So during our tour there, we finally referred to it as Mastika. Me being from Massachusetts, yes, I came up with that. And we called it that while we were over there. What made it challenging in Paktika Province was the elevation. Doing operations at the elevations they had. It ranged everywhere from 4,900 feet up to 12,100 feet. And soldiers from Task Force Currahee on a daily basis out doing foot patrols, carrying over 100 pounds of gear in the heat, the cold, the rain, the snow. If you haven't tried to breathe at 10,000 feet, you haven't lived. The mission of my support battalion was to support the 26 bases that were out there in Paktika and East Ghazni provinces. Pretty much what I had to do was provide all the supplies, services, and medical support for the task force of approximately 5,000 soldiers. So I took the great 20 years of education the Army gave me in logistics and threw it out the window. Didn't apply. You got to be creative. You got to have creative solutions. You got to come up with off-the-wall solutions. Let me just give you an example. I'm out at Combat Outpost Marga on the Pakistan border. Soldiers there are living as rough as anybody. Now, this was toward the end of the deployment, so I got out there, and the company commander is all proud. He met me and said, "Sir, we have a washing machine. We have a makeshift shower, and we have a water tank." I said, "I know. I got them for you." So he brought me over and said, "Sir, we are not complaining by any means. This is better than we've lived all year." And he goes, "Let me show you how it works. We disconnect the hose, and we run the shower. Then we reconnect the hose, and we run the washing machine." And I thought to myself, well, why do they have to do that? And I closed my eyes and thought of Fort Campbell, Kentucky in my backyard, where I had hoses. And I had 2 hoses and 1 spigot. How did I do it? With a $5 hose splitter. Got back to my base that night, emailed my wife and said, "Honey, mail me 5 hose splitters." She mailed them out to me, and when I brought it up there, you'd think I was bringing them a case of beer, though we couldn't drink in theater. And sure enough, they could do both. Didn't even think twice about it, went back about my business. When they redeployed, that company commander found my wife at the redeployment ceremony and went up and thanked her and says, "Ma'am, you made a great difference in the soldiers' lives out of Kot Marga by buying a $5 hose splitter." Off-the-wall solutions to make life better for soldiers. That's what it's about. So what's it like for the soldiers living on these FOBs? Like I mentioned, most are very austere. Half of the FOBs were right along the Pakistan border, making you vulnerable for attack day, night, on the base, off the base. You're always vulnerable. We only had 5 FOBs that had no sewage collection capability. What does that mean? It means you're going into what's called a wag bag. You do your business, you seal it up, hopefully, you discard it into the fire pit, and then when the wind changes just right, a beautiful aroma comes across the base. We also had no running water on 80% of the bases that we had. That means we relied completely on bottled water to cook, clean, drink, and anything else you need water for. A lot of the soldiers there were washing their clothes by hand. In addition, 1 hot meal was a luxury for these soldiers. Now, what we have today, because I'm really trying to give you the experience, is a sample of 2 of the better heat and serve meals that we have in the Army. It's chicken and dumpling filling and glazed ham. What we'd like to do right now is bring that in and let you sample this. And when these soldiers, this is their one hot meal a day, I want you to think of the last good meal you had at a restaurant and compare it to this gourmet glazed ham and chicken and dumpling filling, please. Don't be shy, eat up. Dig in there, ma'am. I hate to interrupt you while you're eating, but let me move on a little bit. Frequent showering was also not feasible because of lack of bulk water, and only 40% of the FOBs had hot water. Now, you want a great way to wake up, take a cold shower in Afghanistan. That'll wake you right up. Now, what I was going to do is demonstrate, what it smells like when soldiers don't shower. So I was going to take this entire week, run 4 miles a day, not shower, and then come in and walk around my arms up and let you all get a whiff. However, my wife let me make it about 2 before she was about to kick me out of the house, so I apologize, I can't give you that experience. But you take the hard work, the heat, the lack of showers, washing your hands by clothes, washing your clothes by hand, and then you just think, that's just part of life. Part of life for the soldiers on these FOBs. In addition, we had to sleep, the soldiers were sleeping on cots or plywood bunk beds, no privacy. You only hope that your roommate didn't snore very loud and that he didn't stink too bad. The free time, all our time off. The soldiers' time off was consumed with force protection duties, life support duties, and preparing for your next patrol and maintaining your gear. Air conditioning, at the beginning, non-existent. The reliance on fuel was great. For force protection, for communication, completely relying on fuel at a lot of our bases. When there was no fuel, there were no lights, and there was no heat, there were no cameras, there was no radio. Only the operations center would be powered when we were low on fuel at any of the bases. Now, let me give you an example. February 2011, FOB Wazaquad down in southern Pakistan was down to less than 1 day of supply of fuel because we couldn't get in there because of the weather. They went around and drained every vehicle, every generator, and put it in for the operations center communication and force protection systems. That means no heat in the guard towers in February, no heat in the rooms, no lights, only power in the operations center. Then the commander and first sergeant started identifying wooden buildings that they were going to tear apart to use to burn for heat and firewood. Now, when's the last time you had to make a decision like that? What I'd like to try to do, and I know I know where we are today, and I'm going to try to do the best I can to demonstrate life of a soldier on a forward operating base. Here I have a volunteer civilian who just got off a 72-hour patrol and just slept through my entire presentation. Thank you very much. So he just got off a 72-hour patrol last night, and he's laying down sleeping. Now, before he went to bed, he had a great hot heat and serve meal, which I hope you're enjoying. Sure enough, he wakes up in the morning. What do you think the first thing he's got to do? He's got to go to the bathroom. So he gets up and runs over. Now, we don't have any sewage. I'm sorry. You got to use the wag bag. Tear it open. Put it in. Now, your buddy's probably sitting right next to you like this. All right, you're done with your business. You zip it, walk over and throw it in the burn pit. All right, now you get to take your shower. Refreshing shower in the morning. You pull out your baby wipes, you wipe your vitals, whatever those may be. Now you brush your teeth, you shave with cold water, and you put on your fresh underwear and t-shirt that you washed by hand 5 days ago and put the same sweaty uniform you wore yesterday. Now it's time to go to work. So you walk over and put on your 70 pounds worth of gear. Wrong way. And now it's time to go to work. Now, do this every day for 365 days. I hope this gave you a bit of appreciation for what our soldiers do. What do we do now? Oh, I forgot to tell you. By the way, living on the Pakistan border, you're vulnerable to indirect fire and rocket attack at any time, day or night. You got to be ready. So I hope this gave you an appreciation for what it's like for a soldier living in an austere fob in Afghanistan. And just think, when you're back home and you're comfortable in your house, these are what the soldiers are living like 365 days a year. Let's move to talk about being a logistician and really service to others. Service to others as an Army logistician means providing the right supplies to the right location at the right time. At a bare minimum, you do this so that the units can continue combat operations. What I said when I got over there as a senior logistician is that logistics would be transparent to the warfighter on the ground. That was my job. In addition, had to be creative with all of our solutions, always looking for ways to improve the quality of life. We had hot water heaters that we could get out there we got our hands on. We got our hands on some space heaters, Mountain Dew, Rippets, little packets of cream cheese for their bagels. Anything you can do to make their life better is what it's all about. Support forward was the motto of my battalion. We lived it, we loved it. Well, my staff didn't love it too much because it was a tough mission. However, we would do without on our base before somebody forward would do without. It became a way of life and a source of pride for the soldiers of my battalion. First thing I'll talk about is walking blood banks. We weren't able to store a lot of blood over there at any of the locations, but often soldiers that were injured in the battlefield needed blood and needed it quickly. What we did was pre-screen all the soldiers in the battalion, so when this did happen, they could line up and quickly get blood so the surgeons could do the work and stabilize the soldiers. All we could do at our level was stabilize so they could go to the next level of care at Bagram Air Base and on to launch to Germany if required. We had a civilian, U.S. civilian that was injured on one of our bases very badly, needed blood. Without even asking, the mechanics from my company lined up, pulled their sleeves up, and were ready to go. Stick me, take my blood. In another instance, we had an NCO who was in a firefight, got badly injured, brought into our forward surgical team. They were working on him to keep him alive. They had to stabilize him. Once again, we set the walking blood bank up, and it took 60 units of blood to stabilize this NCO, long enough so we could get him to Bagram Air Base. Within 24 hours, he was at launch stool, where unfortunately he succumbed to his injuries. But the only reason he made it that far was the quick reaction of the soldiers, the medical personnel, and the U.S. Air Force aeromedevac personnel. Mail. One of the first things I did when I went around in Afghanistan was I tried to get a pulse on what makes give soldiers morale. Mail was a big deal. And what I was getting, it was just taking several weeks at some of these bases to get mail. And that's just unacceptable. So one thing I came back, and you got to remember, mail is the way you connect back home. These soldiers are gone for 365 days. They're missing Christmas, Thanksgiving, spring break, first steps, your tooth falling out, first day of school. They're missing all this. And the way they connect is through mail. So I have to admit, I do watch the show Survivor, and I just get a kick when at day 25 they get a letter from their family and they break down because they miss them so much. I'll do that at day 360 and tell me what it's like. When I got back, I looked at my staff and gave an order. No base would go more than 5 days without mail. At the 4-day mark, you come to me and tell me it's 4 days, and I'll reallocate assets to get it out there. It's that important. The soldiers fighting the toughest fight benefited from this, as they should. Great story I like is I went out to a base, and as we got there, I brought mail with me that day, and of course, right away they start breaking it down. And a young soldier comes off 72-hour patrol. And he comes over and right to the mail line, gets a letter. And he sits down, he's reading it, and you can just see the expression on his face. And when I talked to him, it was a letter from his wife and his young daughter. And I'll tell you what, you couldn't wipe that smile off his dirty, exhausted face if you tried. Absolutely priceless. Last thing I'll discuss is the Steak and Ice Cream Express. My first trip when I got into theater was out to Combat Outpost Munoz. When I got out there, hey, sir, you want to eat? So we sat down, had a great heat and served meal. When I got back to my base that night, they served steak, mashed potatoes, corn on the cob, ice cream, and cake. And I just said, this isn't right. Thus, the Steak and Ice Cream Express concept was birthed. And I went to my staff and said, let's figure this out. My welders would make a large grill that we'd take out and leave out there for them. My food service personnel would gather enough steak, mashed potatoes, corn on the cob, fresh fruit, cakes, pies, ice cream, charcoal. We'd load it all into a helicopter. And this was going to be a complete surprise every time we went out. We'd find the soldiers that are living the hardest, fighting the hardest, and we'd just show up. We'd show up, the helicopter would come in, we'd get off, roll our sleeves up, and we'd start setting up. Then we'd marinate the steaks, best we could. We'd set the grill up, start grilling steaks. Then we'd set up, we'd serve them, and then we'd clean up. And I'll tell you what, just the response and how gracious they were for us coming out there and thankful just made our day. I made sure that I personally served every soldier that went through the line. I looked them in the eye and said, thank you for what you do every day. I really appreciate it. Now, a good story about Combat Outpost Munoz is inside a bowl. About 200 yards up is an outpost. And when we're out there grilling one time, the smoke actually carried up to the combat outpost. It had a little wall around it, and I see these heads peek over, and you could see the smile looking down. And when they were properly relieved, they ran down that mountain pass and got in line and got their steak. And it just is a great, great time, and just to see the expression, the thanks was just priceless. I wrap this up and talk about being a logistician in service to others. I recently read a book called Start With Why. And as I went through it, I tried to draw parallels. My unit was no Southwest Airlines. We're no Apple. I have nowhere near the charisma or leadership abilities of Dr. Martin Luther King or President John F. Kennedy. However, I can see a correlation with the mission that my battalion did over there. Logistics is not about the aircraft. It's not about the parachutes, the trucks, the supplies, the wag bags, the steak and ice cream. It's not about any of that. It's about getting the right supplies to the right location at the right time. And being good logisticians and leaders, we try to do that little bit extra with the steak and ice cream in the mail. I challenge every leader out there, no matter what organization you run, ask yourself, what are you doing to serve others? And what have you done to make life better for your people? That's what makes a difference. And that's what separates the good from the great. Thank you very much.